So we are starting the part 3. I want to show you how to set the preload perfectly. Previously, we put everything back together. New grease, everything clean perfectly. But how do we set the correct preload? The answer is, the first step you need to do, very, very important. You need to tighten up. You need to tighten up both. Tighten up the lug nut with two 17mm wrenches. But you don't want to make it way too tight. You want to make it kind of tight in a way that the axle still moves. Now it's a little bit tight, right? But this is gonna come loose. Why? Because I'm only using a little bit of force between the two 17mm wrenches. So how do we solve this problem that if I want to make it too tight, then the bearing wheels will be stuck in place. If I make it too loose, this will come out. How do we solve this problem? It's easy. You will need to have one of these flat cone wrenches. Okay? They come in a set. It's extremely handy. You can buy a set and you can use this forever. So first step, once you set a rough preload by two 17mm wrenches, you go ahead, tighten this up, use the cone wrench and also the regular wrench. You make this tight. As you can see, now there's an opposing force between the lug nut going down and also the cone nut going that way, right? But once you do that, it might come loose. It might become loose, or there might be some play. Here you can see there's a little bit of play. Listen to it. A tiny bit of a play. Let me see if you can pick up this. There's a tiny bit of a play. And how do you solve this play problem? The play means there's a little bit of a gap. The bearing is a little bit too loose. We need to make sure the cone go down a bit more. But we have tightened up the cone and also the lug nut. Here is the tip. Okay, after you have completely secured, tighten up the cone and the lug nut. Now you can go back to the 17mm wrenches again. You can do this to do a tiny adjustment, because when you do this, when you make it tight, you will also be turning the cone with the lug nut as you make it tight. That way, the cone won't come loose against the lug nut, right? So you want to go a tiny bit of adjustment. That's so tiny. I'm gonna guess that's a 1/32th of a turn. And then you check it again. Wow, now it's perfect. Because I've done this so many times, so I kind of get it done perfectly in one go. Okay, so now you have the lug nut against the right lug nut, against the right cone perfectly, right? And then, so now you have a perfect preload, and that's how you make sure how you achieve a perfect preload in a way that the lug nut won't come loose. Okay, so you want to make sure you have a very good grip, very good tightening between the lug nut and also the cone. That's the tip. And then you can put this back. When I put this back, I would also, when I put the seal back, I will also add a little bit of grease over here to completely seal this gap. Completely seal this gap. And I'll give it a turn. Nice feels very, very nice. Let me Now it feels very nice. I'm gonna work this in a little bit. Use a pick to make sure this is done perfectly. I'm just using a pick on the edge to make sure this is done perfectly. All right, so now it's all around sealed perfectly. And then when I turn this, I feel a little bit of resistance, but I feel it feels it actually feels kind of smooth. The resistance mainly from the tight fit of the rubber seal, and that's okay. Now you go to the other side. Now we're gonna do the same thing. Apply a bit of this tacky red grease. Just like that. But by the way, I highly recommend that you buy a set of these, either power tool or bike hand comb wrenches. You buy a whole set. If you don't want to buy a whole set, you buy 13, 14, 15 millimeter. Okay. Now this is perfectly done. Let's put everything back. And of course, you need these sharp towels. Otherwise, it's very greasy. And also, you need a pair of gloves. One of the biggest problems for me is how greasy this is. It's just, when it's so slippery, so tacky, it just doesn't feel good, right? And then you clean this edge, clean around the hub very carefully. And now I'm gonna put a wheel back to see how well it turns, okay?